Welcome to Hatman Strats Back Daily Boxing News. I'll talk about Chris Eubank Jr.'s fight with Kamil Sharameta in a separate video. In this video though, I want to focus on this rivalry, this quote-unquote beef with Conor Benn. From day one, when they tried to make this fight several years ago, I was one of the people who said that I'm not particularly interested in it. I always said it was a weird matchup to make and that it was a very forced and manufactured rivalry, purely because their dads were genuine rivals back in the days. It was all about making money. And so they played up this idea that Conor Benn and Chris Jr. hated each other. I've never bought it. I always thought that Conor Benn should have continued his trajectory at welterweight, building up to a title shot in that weight class, and that Chris Eubank Jr. should have been targeting world champions at 160, not fighting each other. To me, that was always weird. I might feel different if Conor Benn was a champion who'd cleaned out 147 and Eubank Jr. was a champion at 160. Then a fight like that might actually make a bit more sense. But the way it stood, Conor Benn had never fought for a world title, and Chris Eubank Jr. was not a champion at 160. It just seemed like a horribly contrived and forced rivalry to me. And it seems like that today, in October 2024, more so than ever. That performance they put on during fight week for Beterbiev Bivol was laughable. The little confrontation in the hotel, the confrontation in the ring after Eubank Jr.'s fight, where the pair of them looked like they wanted to bust out laughing. Yeah, that's how serious their rivalry is. That the pair of them, far from having to be held apart, they could barely contain their laughter. I could barely contain mine because the whole thing was just so contrived. Contrived, of course, because beef sells. If you can convince the public that two fighters really hate each other, they're more likely to want to see the fight. Simple as that. And as for the fighters themselves, the fact they want to fight each other, I don't think it's just a measure of the amount of money the fight might generate, because they're both prize fighters. I think it's also a measure of the lack of genuine ambition the fighters have to achieve in their respective divisions, particularly Eubank Jr. He doesn't seem to want to go anywhere near the likes of Aleem Kanuli. I haven't even heard him talk about fighting someone like an Erislandy Lara or a Carlos Adames. He's talking about Canelo, who's at 168, which to me just seems like a cash out opportunity. And other than that, he's talking about Conor Benn, who's a welterweight. He seems to have no desire whatsoever to fight the top guys in his own division. And I have to imagine it's because he doesn't think he can beat any of them, or at least he's not very confident of beating any of them. And of course, they don't pay the kind of money that fighting a Canelo or a Conor Benn would pay. So he doesn't think the risk is worth the reward. That's my best guess. Similar situation for Conor Benn, although I think he's a bit more willing to fight the champions at 147 than Eubank is to fight champions at 160, especially if Jerome Ennis moves up in weight to 154, which might happen sooner rather than later. I don't think Conor Benn is particularly concerned about the remaining champions, but still, the Eubank Jr. fight is attractive, again financially, but also because if he were to lose, he can say, well, I was fighting a middleweight and I'm only a welterweight. So it wouldn't necessarily take away from his standing as a welterweight. His stock as a welterweight might not drop that much if he were to lose to Chris Eubank Jr. So it's a risk worth taking, long story short, in Conor Benn's mind. Just as an aside, I don't know what made Conor Benn think that this haircut was a good idea. Looking like that kid from Harry Potter. Yeah, his dad Nigel had a slick back at one point during his career back in the days, but it was never this horrendous. Conor Benn out here looking like some type of Latino pimp. Looks crazy. Anyway, give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think this rivalry is as contrived as I do? As forced? I mean, they've been trying to force this fight through for over 2 years now. Think about it. They've basically put both of their careers on hold just to try and make this fight. Not just the fighters themselves, their teams have put their careers on hold to try and force this fight through. I can't ever recall a fight being this badly forced. All these obstacles in the way of the fight happening. From a boxing perspective, there's no real logic in the fight. There's no need for the fight. Commercially, yeah, I get it, but in terms of the trajectory of their careers in their respective divisions, this fight makes no sense. But they've forced it through anyway. And at this stage, based upon the whisperings and the murmurings, it looks like it's probably going to happen. Because now you've got them confronting each other in Saudi Arabia, which means that Turki Al-Sheikh is probably involved behind the scenes. When he's involved, stuff stuff gets done. Fights tend to happen. So looks like this will probably take place, and things are maybe being finally smoothed out now between Conor Benn, the British board, and UCAD. Maybe they'll give him a retroactive ban and he can jump straight in there against Eubank Jr. If the fight goes ahead, who do I expect to win? We'll talk about that in a separate video. I'll talk about Eubank Jr.'s fight against Sharameta in a separate video. He looked okay. It was standard Eubank fare, really. It's what most of us expected. Certainly didn't massively impress, but he dominated the fight. It was what it was. Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. And before I go, make sure you check out these videos that I've just uploaded to my Patreon page. One of them is a nearly 3-hour career review on Riddick Bowe, where I analyze footage of many of his most significant fights. So this is not the screenshots I use on YouTube. This is actual video footage of his fights. And I've also uploaded this video of the first round of Beterbiev versus Bivol, where I'm actually counting the number of punches landed, because CompuBox for that particular round was way off. Not even close to being accurate. The real punch stats for that round were far closer than CompuBox had them. And they missed the best punch of the round, which was actually landed by Artur Beterbiev. That's a fact. That's not conjecture. I show it in this video in slow motion, in HD, so there can be absolutely no doubt whatsoever. If you want to access this video along with hundreds of hours worth of other exclusive boxing content, as well as our members chat, just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called the Boxing Brotherhood. There's no contract, no commitment. You can cancel at any time, just like Netflix, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper. Just download the app from the Play Store or the App Store. All the links are in the description box below.